Hello! As I'm recording this, we are days away from December 1st. So, welcome to this month's Plan With Me, where the theme is, well, snowflakes. This was a planned theme, but I decided to execute it in a simpler way at the request of a friend. You can see here the snowflake that we are going to create in this bullet journal setup. This is actually the simpler way, and when I saw it, I thought, well, has a lot of impact and is right up my alley. We'll get back to the snowflakes in just a moment, but right now I want to talk about decorative elements. Often we go out to the store when we come up with a theme and we purchase paper, and I thought I would just lean into this idea of keeping it simple and decided to create my own decorative elements out of things I had at home. I am using all my embossing materials. I just use like a chalk, which I put on the paper so that when I put down the embossing powder, it doesn't stick to it. I'm using a white stamp white ink, to stamp on several snowflakes, and I'm going to use the embossing powder to create this sort of textured effect on the paper. When you see it in person, I don't know if it'll show up as well on camera, but when you see it in person, it's reflective and textured and really quite nice. If you don't have embossing powder, you can use a die cut machine or an embossing machine, or you can use stickers or stamps without the embossing powder to create great decorative elements. I often use this to create cards, and I've also created my own wrapping paper using stamps. You really can create your own decorative elements pretty easily for your bullet journal. If you decide to give it a try, I would suggest choosing one element or very few elements in creating your decorative paper, like I am doing here with the snowflake stamps. Hopefully, you do a better job of keeping things neat and tidy. I will have to admit that I was not very neat and tidy in this process. I was moving pretty fast, trying to get the decorative elements ready to go because I was ready to bujo. I was ready to sit down and start making these spreads. I'm going to speed things up a bit here. I am using my heat gun to get the embossing powder to work its magic, and I use this basically on all the pieces that I am creating for my bullet journal. Keeping it really simple. I had considered doing some paintings and some other things, but I was like, why? I used a bunch of different papers that I had on hand, and even just changing the paper up a bit using the same decorative style here, it just looks a little bit different, a little bit more prominent, still very messy, but these elements really worked well, and you'll see them in the bullet journal and how I'm going to use them in just a moment. We are just about to get into the snowflakes. We're going to do two different versions of this snowflake. This is something you've probably seen before, maybe even done before. The first snowflake is made out of paper bags. These bags are really tiny, the type of bags you would use to give out like a Halloween candy or some type of treat. I pre-drew one snowflake and then I used it as a stencil for all the others. And then from there I cut each one out, and we're going to glue them on top of one another. Once they are glued on top, they will be able to be opened easily to create the snowflake. The second snowflake needed to be considerably smaller, so I couldn't use the paper bags. I used 8.5 by 11 regular printer paper to create these snowflakes. The first thing I did was cut that paper in half. The next step was to fold that paper a little over halfway and then fold the other side down and glue it down. I hope that makes sense. A little hard to explain it. The next thing you want to do is use that first fold to create all the additional pieces. I had way more than I needed to create these snowflakes, so you can use a little less. I think I had like 14. After that, the process is the same. I folded it in half, did the tracing, and created the snowflake for my weeklies. Now that all the elements were created, it was time to just go in and set up my bullet journal. So I went in and cut out the Dutch door for this particular setup. And then a quick check to make sure that this snowflake was going to fit in that particular area. It was a relief, actually. All right, so now it's time for the bulk of the work, honestly, going in and setting up my weekly pages. It took the majority of time in setting up this spread, which took a couple of hours to get all the elements together. I used the Alistair method, tasks on one side, and the days of the week on the other, where I write my appointments. This is the method I use pretty much every week, and it works for me. I cut out the snowflakes prior to and put those on the page where I'm going to put the numbers. This is going to be a running theme, these snowflakes. I decided to do a large calendar page for December. There are a lot of things, appointments, holidays, birthdays, just a lot going on in December, and I was going to need the space. It's interesting because I figured out after I did it that this was basically the same calendar setup that I had for the previous year. I also figured out that it's the same colors. I really love these icy blues in December. I think because it says holiday without being a particular holiday. I think that's what it is. But these little snowflakes, I bought a whole bunch of punchers from Amazon for some other projects, and then I had this snowflake puncher in there and I used it for this particular setup. I have a fondness for these little snowflakes. It was just an idea, and it was just the right amount of decorative element without adding too much business to the page. Now, I'm working on my mood tracker here. I didn't want to use paper here because I knew I was going to be adding other things, and I had so much bulk that was going to be part of this particular spread and just this journal in general. A lot of bulk in terms of the last 6 months of the year of my setups. I did the same embossing setup, and then on top of the mess I made with the embossing, I decided, of course, to add glitter. I added a few of those little snowflakes, and this mood tracker is going to have multicolor snowflakes. Each snowflake will represent my mood for the month. They'll just be falling from the sky. This really sort of reminded me of home growing up and all the snow, that big banks of snow, and I wanted that element here in the journal. Rather than use glue, I'm using a double-sided tape to put these snowflakes in. I am doing this at this point in the setup, but I highly recommend adding the snowflakes as the very last. I added this bulk in, and it made it a little bit more difficult to set up some of the rest of the pages that I hadn't completed. I also tape this in just a little too far down so my pages rub against it. So something to think about and be conscious of as you set up your pages. Next, I used some of that decorative paper that I created, and I am going in here with my calendar page and taping these elements in. I have grown a little tired of the glue just because it gets messy. It's more flexible than the tape for sure, but the tape really gave me the blues this month though, because I kept messing up the alignment. I'm just gonna have to live with some of these mistakes. I use some date tape that I have, which I love to use for my monthly tracker. I use it to track bills and such. Had to bring out the stencil. I know, but I struggle with the calligraphy, so I often will use a stencil, especially when I just want the lettering to be a specific type of way. Every year I say I'm going to make a point to dedicate some time to it, but I never do. I am going in with a Muji very fine point pen here and writing down the days of the week and the dates for my weeklies and my monthly setup. This snowflake, guys, oh, I love it. It's the little bit of extra that I need for my spreads. I can't explain it why I sort of lean into the more is more aesthetic in my bullet journal, but this snowflake does the trick without things getting out of hand in terms of timing. And last but certainly not least is the cover page. Again, the stencil writing down DEC, a little abbreviation for December. And I am going to use a glue stick this time and indulge in the glitter once again. Those snow-packed peaks, that's what I wanted, just a little bit. This purple was really bothering me. I knew that it was going to dry clear, but even so, I was struggling. I had this washi tape. It looked like it was frosted almost, and I thought this is perfect. I just had it in my stash. I don't even know where I got it from. I decided to use the tape again. Part of me said use glue, but I just knew it would be stronger and less messy to use a tape. The thing about the tape though is once you put something on it, it does not come up. This is sort of a warning for you as I make several mistakes here. This first one though gave me minor heart palpitations because I realized well before I put it down all the way, but that I was putting it in upside down, and so the date was going to be upside down at the top, and that could not happen. So I had to rip it out. The paper got a little. It was a pretty thick paper, so luckily I didn't, have too much of a problem. And with our snowflake inserted, we are done with our December setup. And it's time for the final flip. I can never get past this Trapper Keeper without wanting to play with it. I'm going to miss it because now we're going to be switching to a totally new journal. All right, and there is our super simple, high impact, but really beautiful and delicate snowflake. I really love how this all came together. You can't really see the snow at the bottom very well, but it sparkles at the bottom. And then this little mini snowflake. I can't even express how I felt when I completed it. It's been a long year, and the December setup marks the end of the setups for 2022. So the end to another year of bullet journaling. I just want to say thank you to everyone who watches my videos and comments in the comments. It's greatly appreciated. And for those who have subscribed to my channel previously and this year, thanks for rocking with me. And I can't wait to do the full 2022 flip. Put a snowflake emoji in the comment section if you made it this far. And have a wonderful holiday season.